for coming on time. Greatly appreciate it. Our session today is about emerging technology. So throughout the day, you've heard a lot. Actually, show of hands, how many of you have enjoyed the day so far, or had a reasonable time? Okay, cool. Wonderful. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for waiting through all the way to the end of the day for this session. My name is Faraz. Hoodbhoy. I run AT&T's innovation practice. I run a team that is focused on new technology and am constantly evaluating new technology, playing with it, and working with my colleagues around every space of the business of AT&T, which includes media, telecom, radio technology, everything around operations. And so I get to see a lot of technology, and the coolest part of my job is looking at new technologies from startups and trying to figure out where does that technology belong inside of AT&T. So I see about 500 startups a year. I try to figure out what that technology does, why it's useful, or is it useful, and then try to land it inside of the big business of AT&T. What we're going to do today is try and make this as accessible and easy a conversation as possible. My target for this is my 14-year-old daughter over there. So if she, at the end of this session, she tells me she didn't understand what we were talking about, we've failed. So keep us honest. Everybody in the audience, if you guys have questions, interrupt us, ask us stuff for clarification. But I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to welcome my two panelists here, Zia and Tasneem. I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves a little bit, but these are two wonderful people who are really at the forefront of technology and seeing stuff that I get jealous of. And so I want to have them tell you a little bit about themselves, their background. Zia, why don't you go first?
Okay, yeah. So, Zia Syed, I'm with Ericsson. I'm a CTO and head of product engineering for our Advanced Industries Group. We'll talk about what that means, Advanced Industries, in a bit. So I've been working with Faraz at the AT&T Foundry back in 2012 or 13, and before that at Panasonic Innovation. So being in the Valley for the last over 10 years, I've been in the innovation space looking at different cycles of the hype curves as well, and now finally getting to a point where we see some interesting movements in the industrial space, the kind of technology.
So now you are the hype curve.
Yes, now we are the hype curve. So I think it's interesting to actually see it like that as well. But what I wanted to say is that it's been fortunate to be at Ericsson to look at technology and its impact in the societies in a global perspective. So Ericsson, I don't know if you guys know, we are in over 180 countries. So when we build technologies, actually shape societies. So very quickly, I would say in the last 20 years, since the mobile communication came, we saw how it changed how everybody has been working. We have mobile in terms of YouTube or the ways of the Ubers of the world, how it changed society. Now we're coming to a cusp of how the industries are primed to use that technology to disrupt and innovate. So that's, I think, the area I would be most interested in.
Cool. And Tasneem.
Hi everybody, assalamu alaikum. My name is Tasneem Manjra. I currently work as head of network development at Volvo Cars' tech fund. So Volvo Cars, the XC60s and 90s, etc. They have a brand new venture fund that they started about a year ago. And the focus is 100% mobility, so that includes cybersecurity, it includes all the different things that would make autonomous sort of available, InsurTech, you name it. So kind of under the hood, but also addresses some things in terms of Industry 2.0, so actually producing the cars in a very viable way. So my job there is primarily to basically meet with startups, meet with VCs, make sure they know about our mission, the things that we're doing, know that we're sort of a testing ground. So a lot of the startups we work with, Luminar, if any of you guys are familiar, it's a LiDAR company. We invested in them.
What's LiDAR?
It's a non-radar based sensor. So basically for radar, there's certain frequencies, and so LiDAR addresses a completely different frequency. It's a little bit more dense, and for LiDAR, so you guys might have heard of Velodyne. That was a technology that Toyota was using. That was actually to damage your eye. So we have to think of ways where sensors in the car, especially for a completely autonomous world, it's not damaging the users, but also the people around it, so pedestrians.
So cars are sending out light and using that light bounce back to tell whether or not there's an object, and so it doesn't drive into us. And so as we approach the world of autonomous vehicles, which might be segue into this. What are autonomous vehicles and
I never said what I do for work, for
Yes.
a living, my bread and butter.
Oh, please tell me.
No, that's okay.
No, please tell me.
Oh, sure. Okay. So yeah, it's basically just marketing strategy, campaign development, a lot of accelerator work. My last 15 years have been spent in product, marketing, a little bit of strategy, so kind of, building marketing plans for Fortune 500s, plus a lot of startups, which frankly are a little bit more fun. My last job was actually a Point, so some of you in the payments sector know Point. So this is a bit of a change, but it definitely, the autonomous space is quite interesting, so I'm happy to dive in.
All right, so let's dive into that. What are autonomous vehicles, and when do we get them?
Okay, so autonomous is not just self-driving. There's 5 levels of autonomy. So raise of hands, who drives a Highlander? Am I the only one? Okay, so Highlander, for example, or let's say, who has a Nissan SUV? Nissan or Honda
Road.
Pilot? No? No Honda Road. Okay, all right. So let's just say that the lane sensor detection that you have in your vehicle at a very basic level, and I'm not even talking about the fancy cars, that's actually a 2+. That's level 2+ of autonomy. There's 5 different levels. So when you think about full autonomy, the car drives itself, and, you just literally are doing yoga in the car while you're driving to the grocery store, picking up your kids, whatever, that's level 5. Level 2+ is basically some assistance. So it's basically your car kind of saying, there might be a car in the lane next to you, or, you might want to brake, you're about to hit that pedestrian, right? So it's that kind of basic sensing, and it's using all the various sensors on the outside, inside the car, etc. So to get to 5, there's a lot of steps involved. So, and it's very basic. And some of the things are just pose estimation. So basically, if you think about a car, it's driving, and it's autonomous. How do you know that the pedestrian on the corner isn't about to jump into the street, right? Or how do you know that they're stationary? And how should the car react? The reason why something like pose estimation, which sounds very basic, is you're kind of estimating and you're saying, well, that person looks like they're actually about to run in, or versus that person's going to stay stationary, let the car keep going. So these are all very important, small little components of autonomous that would make it possible for cars to drive themselves.
Cool. So so when do I get an autonomous car that is level 5 that lets me not think about what's happening and I can do something else other than worry about driving?
So, subject to opinion, my personal opinion, this is not represent Volvo, is I think it's about 10 years away. I just think and I think it's because of infrastructure, so cities being okay with this, I think it's about consumer perception, so people being comfortable with autonomous. I think it's about all the various components that go into the car. Like there's still, for example, all the various radars, LiDARs, even ultrasound tools that are being used right now, they still can't sense everything. And so if they can't do that on a very basic level, it's hard for me to see a car completely running by itself in the next 4 to 5 years. So I think it's a 5 to 10 year.
So one of the things in autonomous when we see it is a lot of people are talking about autonomous flying cars, and the argument is that flying cars will be there before road cars are autonomous. Do you believe that, or does that sound crazy?
It actually sounds more reasonable to me.
Really?
Yeah, because they're flying, there's less traffic, there are pedestrians, there are all these other distractions. So I think it actually sounds a little more reasonable. Even with autonomous, there are issues like, for example, you have your autonomous car, we can talk about some scenarios and use cases, but you have to find a place to park the car, for example, right? You have all these little sort of basic things that you have to cover. But if you're in the air, you only have one starting point and one end point. It's a little more clear to me.
Cool. So flying cars are coming. You heard it here.
But then what's an airplane? So what, isn't it airplanes already quite a bit autonomous?
Actually, that's a good point. So Zia flies airplanes.
Oh, that's right.
So Zia flies airplanes. Why don't you tell us what's the level of automation in planes today?
No, the airplane I fly has no automation. Those are great. And that's what the fun of it. But I think if you look at what happened with 737 MAX, right, I think it got blown up in terms of there was a sensor that mistriggered, or it kind of a malfunction, and there was a software that tried to correct that. And basically the problem was, and it's very simple, everybody wants to make the airplanes very economical and reuse the competence of the pilots.
And safe.
So what Boeing tried to do is to put a bigger engine on an aircraft. Now the engine that was bigger and more efficient, it doesn't fit it under the wing. So they changed that a little bit higher. so that it fits in the aircraft. Now, in order to do that, they had to modify some part of the software because the angle will change of the airplane. That problem, that software bug, is interesting for the software. Maybe some of the audience here. That software bug that calculates the angle of attack of a wing, that was the one that was causing problem at takeoff to the pilots. And a lot of times you have to disengage that. And then those pilots, those two aircraft that get crashed, those pilots struggled and couldn't disengage that, and you have an accident. We have about 300 people that died, right, total between the two crashes. But that's nothing in terms of how many people on the road die every day. But it's been on the market, right? But that aircraft, and I think that's where I was going to say that I think if maybe we're looking at it, transportation slightly, you know, we're trying to solve a problem, but maybe going in a different way, which is cars. Whereas if you have to just move people around, there are alternatives that should be more viable.
Cool. All right. So our goal in this session is to go through as many buzzwords as possible, make them as simple as possible, and open it up. So the next buzzword we got was around 5G. So Zia, you're the radio guy, or the Ericsson guy. You get to tell us what is 5G and why do people care about it? Why does it matter?
Yeah. So we all have cell phones. Cell phones talks to a tower somewhere where it's over the radio, electromagnetic waves, and that's how on top of the electromagnetic waves we send data, which is our Facebook and the YouTubes and all those things, right? Or the email. It all evolved. You have to look at it in the perspective of the last 20, 30 years. Everybody has phones where you have to...
We go back to the last 5, too long.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I'm 14 years old and not know. There used to be a time where you have to go into part of your house to make a phone call. And if you have a relative in America, you have to call somebody to make a call for 3 minutes. And then they will tell you that, okay, we will get a call at some point. And you have to be close to the phone to have a 3-minute call with somebody in America. That's how at least I grew up when my brother's working. To the point that everybody said, oh, you have a phone, cordless phone that you walk around the house, that probably these kids don't even know, that you've got to have a phone that has a wireless. Now, what's happening is that smartphones, and this is the 5th generation of the wireless technology over the last 20, 30 years, that would allow us to do things on our devices in a very fast, reliable, and in a more heterogeneous way. And that's...
Wow, that's too many words. Okay, make it simpler.
Make it simpler. So right now, for example, the consumer, your phones are there mostly to download data. You get data from your device. Now, these are still consumer devices, right? Now, when she's going to build a car, that car generates about 15 gigabyte of data per hour when the engine is running. That 15 gigabyte tells you everything from the tire pressure to the firing rate of the cylinders in the car engine and everything. That is a lot of the information that is useful for the engineers as well as the people who are building the routing algorithms and all that.
And safety information.
Safety information, right? And safety information, all that. That data needs to go somewhere else. And now the flow of information is not from somewhere from Facebook.com coming into your phone. It's from that car generating a lot of data that needs to go up. And this is a paradigm shift in terms of how wireless technologies have been evolved in the last 20, 30 years. So previously it was built for humans, it was built for people to make phone calls. Now it's about people, devices, machines to generate a lot of data and send it somewhere else. So that's where the 5th generation would enable a lot of fundamental new disruption and innovation. And
so only because I work at AT&T, I can talk a little bit about this. So one of the big things around 5G, and how many of you have heard the term 5G? Good, everybody. How many of you are AT&T subscribers? Thank you for your business. So many of you might look at your phone and see something that says 5GE on your phones. That's part of the evolution of how we're trying to get to 5G and trying to help people start to recognize the benefits of faster, more reliable communications that are at lower latency. But to Zia's point, what we're really trying to do is make these networks so reliable, so fast, and so low in their latency that we can actually start to have the network do some really interesting things where it is actually the network that's going to do a lot of your compute processing services. So right now, how many of you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about augmented reality and virtual reality, how many of you have tried an augmented reality or virtual reality device so far? Oh, good. A lot of you have. How many of you love the experience and say that it's like the best thing ever? 0, right? What? Oh wow, you really loved it that much? Cool. Well, would you believe me if I said that it really could be made much better? And one of the big problems with it is the amount of compute that you can shove into an endpoint device. And part of the reason of 5G is that what we're going to try to do is move the compute, the processing, outside of the device into the network. And that's where we get into the topic of edge compute. And Tasneem, you've talked about edge, and that means something for Volvo. What does it mean to you guys?
Yeah, so for us, edge is really about reducing processing time. So you don't want data to go up to a cloud and then come back, and then boom, it hasn't figured out like what your speed of your car is, and you crash and you're no longer here. So we don't want that to happen, right? Everything should be local, it should be super fast, and there should be no pauses. And the way I always explain it to people is like, you've got a phone, right? And I don't know about you guys, but my AT&T often has some issues. It's not the phone, it's Apple. It's not AT&T.
It's an Apple. It's an Apple.
It's an Apple problem. And you know, if you think about your phone freezing, right, for even a second or two, imagine if that happened in your car, and it's an autonomous car. What would happen in 2 seconds moving at 190 miles an hour or whatever, right? It's a big problem. So
Sorry, we got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question for you. Do you think that the whole thing about 5G evolution is going to set the market? Because
Wow, I love that question. Gee, thanks.
it's slower than 4G LTE from T-Mobile.
It depends on where you're at right now. And so look,
Across the board, we have shown that it's actually slower and actually doesn't have any of the features of 5G. So it's a separate market, and that's what the problem is.
well, okay, so I challenge that because the data says otherwise. So when you go through and look at the data that you're pulling from Ookla or places where you can run the test yourself, you'll probably find it faster. But the reality is 5G is a spectrum of pieces into it. 5GE is our first step at it, and it's really part of the way that we're getting to 5G and then eventually 5G plus, where we're trying to go through. So am I going to comment on it as to the deceptive marketing thing? No, I'm not going to comment on that because I'm not here to necessarily push an AT&T perspective. I'm trying to push more around the industry perspective around it more than anything else. Sorry,
I know. Do you want to lean in now? So basically, look. So for us, it's about the car being able to process things. If there is, for example, any issue, any pause, any break, we should have some sort of like a duplicate system that's being able to handle and process whatever the information that's coming in from the sensors, for example, so that it knows at all times what's happening around the car. So for us, edge is all about reducing that.
So when you say edge, you mean the compute is on the car?
Is in the vehicle.
Is in the vehicle.
Is in the vehicle itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I say edge, I mean edge of the network,
Yeah.
and that's where we're trying to push that paradigm to.
Yeah.
Where do you see edge?
One quick question.
Sure.
You said so much data is going to come from the car and go up there. It's going to go to the cell phone, or it's going to directly car will be cell phone by itself and sending that data.
We hope the car is a device on its own, got its own connection point.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go through the
It's
phone.
on its own.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, so for us, when I look at my target audience market is the manufacturing floor or assembly plant of the Volvo, let's say, or a warehouse. Over there, we see a very important trend, which is, and it is global, is the labor shortage and mass customization. So every car
What does that mean?
know,
There's not enough people, and there's too many
choices and too many people want their own customized cars.
Okay.
Just in the cars and the trucks. So Scania, for example, one of our customers, every engine block that goes into manufacturing has a different software, different configuration. Now, what that means is that for each machine, equipment or each manufacturing floor process, they need to make quick decisions in terms of what software to load, what kind of configuration to put in, what modules to put on an engine. That requires people to make those decisions on the edge. That's one point of the edge. Another what's a growing edge point is the robots that move around on the floor. So a lot of parts need to be brought in from a warehouse onto the assembly point. Those robots need to decide and move around. So for us, for me, that is an autonomous vehicle within a factory constraint.
So these are robots that are going around the factory floor and
Yeah.
doing picking things up, assembling stuff.
Absolutely. And I think for me, that is an edge compute as well, because if you look at right now, the cost of each robot is about $40,000 to $80,000. And you look at the cost, and you break it down, and you see a lot of it is dependent on the compute that they have to put in on that, the computers that is on the robot, because they don't have a reliable So now for us, 5G would enable them to move that computer from the robot into another cabinet within the facility and let that robot to be cheaper. More of that can be deployed and more autonomy.
Cool. So moving from there, one of the technologies that goes into these smart robots or robots within or software within 5G is AI and machine learning. And we've kind of heard this term. We actually have a session on. How many of you attended the AI session earlier? 10 people. So I think we can still talk a little bit about AI. Why is AI such a big deal today when it's been around since the 1960s?
I think compute. So fundamentally, I think what has started to come to a point from my perspective is that.
Wait, define AI first.
I like the term machine learning
okay.
Because AI is just machine learning. As I think that it's about how to train a computer, an algorithm, to do certain compute or do certain or perform certain decisions on its own, based on data or the knowledge it has accumulated. Now, previously there are many different ways, or as Faraz was saying, there are many ways you can collect that data, process that data. One of the ways that is being so popular right now is called neural networks. It's about making very tiny decisions, but many millions of those tiny decisions, and then make an aggregated big decision based on that's however neural brain work, human brain work. Now, in the last 10 years, what has happened is that processing or computers have become so fast that you can do that in a cost economical way. That's what it is. The cost of that computation has gone down, and I think that enabled.
So let's put that in perspective. You used to have supercomputers to do some of these complex functions of being able to look at a photo and say who's inside of it, and now we can do it at a fraction of the cost. How many of you use Facebook? How many of you have seen a photo tagged with somebody you know in it where you didn't have to do the tagging, where the system did it for you? Everybody, right? Well, that's an example of computer vision or artificial intelligence, where the machines have learned what you look like and figure out who you are inside of the software.
And I was going to say, this is huge for autonomy, by the way. So a lot of the work that's going on to autonomy right now is literally just tagging. So imagine all the stuff you see on Google Maps when you do sort of like the Google Earth view, or you do like the pedestrian view, and you can actually see everything. It's extremely, extremely critical for your car to be able to identify that's a tree, that's a road, that's a squirrel, that's whatever it is, because it has to identify your surroundings in the same way that we have our own mental heuristics, right? Like we have our own mental rules that allow us to process as drivers, you know, when to stop, when to go, when to speed up, and so you're kind of training the car. So a lot of the work that's being done right now with a lot of the car manufacturers or the OEMs is around tagging. So it's the same kind of concept as Facebook, right? Like this is always for us, right? This man with this hat is always going to be for us, right? This man
It's
is always
a rare hat,
right? It's a rare hat, yeah. We should show the history a little bit. And so yeah, it's super interesting. So a lot of the work, like I work for the venture fund, but I'm within an R&D center, and a lot of the work that's happening with these data scientists is just around tagging. Because basically, once a computer kind of learns, like, okay, the squirrel in Georgia, you know, it kind of, it's like brown, it's about like, you know, 18 inches, whatever. Well, when I see that squirrel again in LA with a palm tree in the background, it's still a squirrel, right?
Except the squirrels in California are black.
And they're kind of aggressive, I just don't mention it. But anyways, so it's that same kind of thing, it's just like that training, but it's extremely, extremely critical for the car. Just wanted to
Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier 10 years, right?
Yeah.
It's just one of the Western countries. What about places like Pakistan and India? Do we ever see a world where no one owns cars or not?
It's a tough question, right? Because like I feel like you have to have the infrastructure there, right? And so right now, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's 10, 15 years out. I mean, like look at India, right? The progress that they've made in certain things like payments, which is your area, like Aadhaar and all this, like that's like blown me away. So they've done it faster than we have here in America, right? And with identification, etc. So who knows? Like maybe they make a big investment in infrastructure, and maybe it becomes part of their economy to start building all the stuff. I mean, it could.
It's possible.
It's possible, yeah.
So I guess the fundamental question still remains, why is artificial intelligence a big deal now compared to what it was before? You said it's because compute, you're saying because it's now about use cases that actually mean something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about augmented reality and virtual reality. What is it? Again, about 60% of the people here actually experienced augmented reality glasses or VR glasses.
They have it on Amazon now, I just want to mention. So
You can also go to an AT&T store and see Game of Thrones on a Magic Leap, which is a really cool experience, which I highly recommend going out and trying. So, are we going to move to a world where we all start wearing goggles and walk around? Is that a reality? How many people here can see themselves wearing glasses, augmented reality glasses, and walking around? Remember Google Glass? One person can, two people can. All right, so now there's about, so once some people start doing it, then everybody starts doing it. Okay, so we will get to that point. So the coolest thing I've seen, and I've seen about 3,000 companies in the role that I've been doing at AT&T, the coolest thing I've seen to date is augmented reality contact lenses, where you close your eyes and you're seeing virtual reality, you open your eyes and you're seeing augmented reality. Entirely powered through wireless technology. The coolest thing ever, and it exists, and it is coming. But I guess the question becomes, are we at a point as a society where we're ready to keep having, isn't it bad enough that my kid is not listening to me and playing Fortnite on his phone? Do I really want a world where everybody's got augmented reality glasses or have another way to be able to space out while talking to you?
I hope not. Honestly, social media has already killed me, and I'm thinking we're so detached from reality, I hope not. But I certainly think there's a lot of very practical use cases. So I'll tell you, for the car industry,
Sure.
you know, part of just purchasing a car now, you know, we're actually integrating the VR experience. So you can actually, for example, if you're customizing your Volvo, you can take a look at it and point your phone, and suddenly the Volvo appears in your room, wherever you are, and it's, you know, it's to scale. You can kind of experience the vehicle before you buy. They're doing that now a lot more in shopping, right? It's like on Amazon, I was buying, I don't know, like some kids' toys the other day for my kids, and like you can see it, you can see the size of the toy.
Wait, so you can like put a Volvo here?
You can put a Volvo here.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think they've either rolled it out or are rolling out soon. So if they
Where
haven't,
can
don't
people
tell me
download
what I
that?
told you, huh?
Where can people download that?
So actually, they're gonna have a Volvo app. It's part of the shopping experience, and I think
Cool.
they're actually trying to do a web. So now, actually, the interesting thing with VR is now you can do a lot of stuff via web. And I can't remember who just rolled out with something. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was like through one of the bigger sort of like service providers. But now, you know, you can actually experience VR via web, which means you no longer have to download an app. It's part of your regular experience. It's using your existing compute on your phone, which I think is kind of cool.
But I think it's interesting, but I think I still feel that a society, as I think as a consumer is one place, but I think if you look at industrial, there are a lot of places it's already being used, and I think we've gone through.
Can you give some cases?
It does. So very clear one I can talk about is when we built 5G radio at Ericsson, so our factory in Tallinn, Estonia, there is a process where when the circuit board comes out of the manufacturing, and then somebody has to verify it, and that is a very experienced person needs to verify the circuit board.
What does it mean to verify?
Verify the circuit logic is there, the assembly, you know, the soldering is correct, the components and all, physically inspect that. And now what they did about a year ago, they built a app that actually just do augmented reality. It just tells you, verify that it's, you know, physically and visually verify the circuit is, you know, inspected.
So you're wearing glasses?
No, so actually they start with the glasses and they realize that actually was more of a cumbersome experience. So what they actually move now is to just have a tablet that is mounted, and it just, as part of a flow, the circuit board comes in, there's a tablet that actually has an interface, and it's just the human experience of putting that glasses on and off, and the wear and tear of that, they just move that all out. So now they're still using the AR experience, but it's through a tablet. I've seen it, so the coolest place I've seen is that when, you know, the jet engine in Germany, there's a company that mills those blades that goes in there. And verification of that, it is very precise.
So that your blades don't break when you're flying?
No, yes, but when they're manufacturing, the way they mill it, it's a very complicated process. And verification of that is also highly precise. And in that one, they use augmented reality as well, part of the inspection as well. And that's also there. I think actually even the unions are okay with that. By the way, in Europe, you have to go through unions to bring all these technologies into the workplace. So I think at the enterprise side or industrial side, I see that a lot more practically being applied in places.
Cool. All right, so last few questions, a few minutes, and then we open it up to everybody else. Tasneem, what do you think is happening, or where are we going from here? What's going to be hot for the rest of this year and early part of next year?
Oh.
Yeah, you get it.
Oh, that's a tough one. I think AR, VR, definitely more applications, especially on the industry 2.0 side, like as you just mentioned. I've definitely 4.0. We also, people say 2.0 and 4.0. Why?
I was looking at that. No, 4.0. I haven't.
And I've also heard manufacturing 2.0 and 4.0. So I've been a little confused about this. But okay, I'll take that offline.
So I found you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think definitely AR, VR, both on the consumer side as well as manufacturing. That's really interesting. I think just continue to work on autonomy. That's again mostly on the B2B side. For consumer, unclear. Can you tell us?
I think 5G would be interesting, but not on a consumer side. I don't think, because faster speed doesn't necessarily change or unlock new experiences yet. I think for us again, it would be more interesting to look at it on the industrial side, and I think given the global politics around how working out in the Asian partners versus the European and the Western world, that dynamic with 5G and spectrum availability will in the next year and a half, next 2 years will be very impactful in the long run, because that would mean that this technology that is currently just used or available to operators, if it becomes accessible to everybody to be able to turn on a cellular technology, 5G, like they turn on their Wi-Fi, that will just manifold so many new opportunities, and that will be the real disruptor.
Cool. All right, questions from the audience?
What is the frequency difference between 4G and 5G? Is it like if we are going with more bandwidth, so that we might increase the frequency, right? So
yes.
It's really about again, the effects on the human health or anything.
Good question.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know about the human health. That's not an area I would go too much. But I think what's interesting about the three. Currently, if you look at cellular, it operates in a sub-gigahertz, so about 1 gigahertz and below, which is the narrowband IoTs in long range. That's kind of where 2G, 3G was. And then you have 1 gigahertz to 5 gigahertz kind of range, where you have Wi-Fi and a bunch of LTE spectrum available. What a 5G enables now is to have a millimeter wave, and that millimeter wave, meaning 28 gigahertz, 60 gigahertz, that could be part of the 5G specifications as well. And that would do two things. First of all, you will have very high bandwidth and those higher frequencies, but your range will come down very small. So sub 1 gigahertz, you can transmit to miles, whereas 5 gigahertz is where 2 building rooms and your Wi-Fi signal kind of dies out, those kind of experience. To millimeter wave to 60 gigahertz, that would really be like this cable length kind of thing. You can do line of sight and all that. And that's what I think differentiate 5G or makes 5G more interesting. That now you can do all of these three type of use cases from one standard. And I think this is one, as a society, as a technology, we have learned that if you do these things in a standardized way, it may take longer, but it actually have an exponential return. So for example, right now, when you have an LTE or your LTE phones now, and you land any country in the world, your phone attaches automatically when you're rolling agreements. But that experience is very seamless, right? It's because you have one standardized technology that's been rolled out globally, and you have the security tied into that part of your strategy. So that's, I think, is
cool. Other questions? Go ahead.
So you guys talked about AI and automation. Autonomous. I was wondering, on the automation side, in the next few years, how will those technologies change economy jobs, especially in the industry?
I think it's going to become very jobs-wise. I think we were going to do more interesting jobs. The boring jobs will be, of course, automated. What else can I say? I think I'm a very optimistic about person in general. So I think that what we do know from that what will, as a consumer, we all are experiencing or expect things to be more customizable, personalized. Technologies would enable us to do that. And I think all the basic or the boring, menial kind of repetitive tasks, that will be automated, and those will be driven by the robots.
Go ahead.
You were mentioning about a device that scans the inside of the assemblies. So is that like available outside Ericsson or is it Ericsson specific?
There's a lot of companies.
There's a lot of
That's all generally around computer vision, and so you basically set up different use cases around vision. So whether you're inspecting for holes in solder or things around that, or people stealing stuff from a retail store, each of those are different training sets or different sets of data that the machine gets trained around, and it's then able to recognize those situations. So there's tons of companies that are doing that right now.
Because even high-scale manufacturing as of today, they use optical inspection.
Yep.
So has it come to a stage where that replacing the AOIs?
It's starting to, but I wouldn't actually, where would you say?
No, I think there are certain class of problems that they have started to do there. It's not mass scale. I think if you look at industry, manufacturing, while everybody would like to say that they are very automated and advanced, it's very still labor intensive. They're still very, I would say, about a decade behind in a lot of cases.
Go ahead.
So what are your thoughts about in AI and machine learning world data governance? How do you see that field getting involved?
You get that one.
I pass.
No, but it's interesting.
I literally pass. I'm like,
So your question is, who owns the data?
No, the data governance. Governance.
Governance in what
In
context?
AI and machine learning world, right? Because that's where it's about like how do you train your machines. Basically, that's how they're gonna. That's what's gonna be right for them. It's all about data. What's input, that's gonna be output, right? So who will own that ethical side of
That's a
data
really good
governance?
question. And to be honest, we're all trying to figure that out right now. So I work for AT&T, which has tons of data, but we're not actually allowed to use that data. So just looking at your cell phone records, every second we're pinging to know where you're at. So by looking at individual records, I could tell if you were riding a bicycle or you were in a car, and we have all that data. But we're actually physically not allowed to even inspect or look at that data, even anonymously.
US or global?
Well, I'm just talking about AT&T, so I can't look at that data, even though we have it all there. We're just not allowed to look at it.
You're not allowed to look at it in the United States, or you're not allowed to look globally anyway?
When we have the data, we're able to look at it. We're not able to look at it in the United States. Now, other telcos around the world are using that, right? So the data privacy laws are different in different countries. So there are countries where they use that data to say how many people. So in France, they're using it to figure out how many people are taking the subways, which routes are not being used. So there's a lot of good stuff that you can do with it as well. The devil is always in the details. Are you going to do the right things with that data or the wrong things? And each country is choosing different paths into it. So you might have heard of things like GDPR and other things that are sort of setting the standards for it. We're all learning as we go, to be honest.
Sorry.
I was going to say, like, even like GDPR, which was supposed to be European only, we adopt it here all the time now because, the average person, they might be using some app here, for instance, they might go fly overseas and suddenly, you have to apply those same standards. So people are just like, preponderance of sort of conservatism, and I think it's a good thing, right? Because, like, look at Facebook and how they've abused data, for instance. Like, they've really gone out on a limb, and I think those extreme kind of examples have made people a bit more cautious. And you think about cars, I was thinking about this the other day, like, you're in a court trial, for instance, and you got in a car accident. They can literally pull that data from your car and say, well, no, you were actually driving at this, speed, you hit the brakes here, no, you were totally wrong. So, it can really change things in terms of, how evidence is used. Think about all the different ways in which data from a car could actually be used against the user. And so, is that something as a society that we want to say, fine, we're going to give you that? We're all assuming that we're good people, so sure, go ahead, take that data and use it however you wish, or no, it's completely private. I need to own my data that comes from my car. It's only for me. So there's definitely a lot of interesting issues. It's just very complex, I feel like.
And I think I'm just saying that for on the industrial side, that is what driving the edge compute business, because everybody wants the data needs to be processed on the edge and on the premise, and that's for us the leading push for the edge compute.
So it doesn't go outside of a physical thing. we're done on time. So, oh, sorry, you have one more question. Why don't we make it this last question?
Tasneem, with the vehicles that you guys are making, is there any oversight or regulation? Because I just read a New York Times article about Boeing, where whistleblowers said that the tools were left behind under cockpits because they were in a rush to roll out those planes. And is there any oversight, or when these cars come out, because all companies will be adopting them?
Or not.
For autonomous vehicles? Oh yeah, so it's really interesting. You know, the state of California, they just approved Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and I forgot one other sort of maybe parts of Palo Alto for self-driving testing. It's terrifying because if you look at the accident rates for Waymo and all these guys, it's like double digits. It's 25 to 30%, right? And we're driving alongside them. And so when I was talking to you guys about the radars and lidars, literally, if you look at it the wrong way, it can actually impact your vision. So I feel like, you know, in the same way, and we go back to Facebook, but do you guys remember when Zuckerberg went to Capitol Hill and he said we're not selling our data, and the lawmakers were just too dumb to understand that he's really BSing them? It's the same situation right now. Our lawmakers are not as advanced on tech, and so right now a lot of the automakers, because look, right here in Silicon Valley, we have almost every single automaker has beta testing facility or a lab, right? They're spending tons of money. And you've got to believe that they're spending a lot of money convincing our lawmakers to do whatever the heck it is that they want. So you have groups like NHTSA, like the National Highway Transportation, whatever, right? Like, you got to wonder, like, if they're not up to date with the stuff that we're doing, it's scary, right? So I'm with you, and the gentleman had previously raised a concern about 5G and just a lot of non-ionizing radiation, et cetera. We need people to really be smart in these government organizations to better understand the impact of all this stuff on our health as well as others.
Cool. So we'll let that be the last word. We'll be around for a few more minutes after, but thank you all for coming to this panel. And we have one more session left at the end of the day outside where we're in the other room. And I hope you guys all join in. I hope you guys had a wonderful day at Open today. Thank you.